Live from the WEEK studio, a discussion about the recent violent activity in Peoria. Your hosts tonight, Tyler Lopez and Lauren Melendez. Peace in Peoria.
Well, good evening and welcome to a special edition of 25 News. I'm Lauren Melendez.
And I'm Tyler Lopez. We had a number of shootings and violent incidents leading off our newscast for recent weeks. One of the ones that was the toughest to forget, a 4-year-old boy caught in the crossfire of a dispute in a local housing development.
Tonight, we're taking a hard look at those crimes and the layered issues contributing to River City violence in an effort to find solutions and create peace in Peoria.
So we have assembled a panel of community activists along with local leaders to try and pinpoint both the issues and the potential solutions.
Now, we want to remind you can also watch our special live on our 25 News Facebook page and interact in our comment section. We will be taking your questions for these panelists in our live Q&A portion at the very end. And speaking of those guests, here's a look at who you'll be hearing from tonight. Peoria Mayor Jim Ardis, Peoria Police Sergeant Sherelle Stinson, who leads their Crime Stoppers Division, community activist Terry Burnside, Gloria Clark, also a community activist, Pastor Martin Johnson of New Beginnings Ministries, 1st District Councilwoman Denise Moore, and Agbara Bryson of the New Millennium Institute.
Also tonight on the panel this evening, Peoria Police Captain Mike Scally, Bernice Gordon-Young, founder of It Takes a Village, Bobby Ford of Peoria Community Against Violence, or PCAV, Chris Duncan, chairman of PCAV, Alyssa Bledsoe, a recent graduate of Manual High School, and Shama St. Louis from the Black Justice Project, and also from the 3rd District, Peoria City Councilman Tim Riggenbach. Thanks to everyone here tonight. These panelists ready to dive right in and tackle some of these issues right here tonight.
But first, 25 News reporter Stephanie Rodriguez digs a little deeper to see how community members identify these problems.
We've got some bleeding going on right now, and we're hemorrhaging, and so we've got to look into ways to stop the bleeding.
So far in 2019, there have been 11 homicides in the city of Peoria. 6 of the victims were under the age of 25, including one 4-year-old who was shot outside a family member's home. These deaths, along with the 18 homicides the city saw in 2018, have left a community saying enough is enough.
I don't want to go to no visuals. This is what we're trying to stop, the visuals. I don't want to be at nobody's visual, but if I have to, I will.
Of this year's homicide victims, 7 were black. Governing.com, that we referenced in our last special, Diversity in Peoria, reports that Peoria still ranks as the 5th worst place for African Americans to live. Lifelong black residents find this disheartening.
I know how it was as a little girl to me being a grown adult with grown children and grandchildren, and it's hard to see how our community has basically failed each other.
Peoria native and Dean of Students at Methodist College, Andre Allen, talked with us about unemployment in the city. In April 2019, Peoria County's unemployment rate was 5.3%. But not being employed isn't the only problem. Some residents have jobs, but not time.
When you got to work 3 jobs, to try to make ends meet, you can't be there to support your kids. You can't be there to, maybe provide that attention that they need to keep them from swaying and being involved in some things that they don't need to be involved in.
A study from a professor at the University of Pennsylvania found Chicago's summer jobs program led to a 43% drop in violent crime arrests over 16 months. Community leaders say unsupervised children have more opportunities to make mistakes. Edna Adams with Women of Pride Peoria completely agrees.
When I was coming up, back to me, around this time of the year, we went from one camp to the next camp to the next camp. And hey, that's how we spent our summer.
Though not everyone has the money to create structure.
I was talking to a mother the other day, and she's got 2 boys. So 2 boys at $250 a boy, that's $500. So she has to come up with $500 to save her 2 young men from running into the possibility of getting into negative behavior.
And if children or older Peoria residents do get into trouble and others are there to see it, rarely are they coming forward to help solve crimes. 4-year-old Jeremiah Ward was gunned down at around 5:30 on a Monday afternoon over a month ago. And still, no arrests have been made.
They're scared of retaliation. They're scared of the unknown of, if I come forward, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my family?
One bad decision breaking the hearts and changing the lives of so many.
You got a mother crying, you got a father upset, hurting, you got children, you got family members or, who have lost a loved one that they love with all their heart. But on the other spectrum of that, you have to look at what you're doing. When you get caught, your family's losing you too.
A lot to think about. Thank you, Stephanie.
And let's get right to our panel to hear their reaction. And we should mention we will be rotating them throughout the night.
And we want to get started first with the mayor. We want to try to keep the responses to under a minute if we can. Mayor Artis, what are some of the efforts recently taken this year that you believe can help reduce the violence?
Well, I think the number one issue that it's not a brand new initiative, but it's one that we've put a lot more focus on in the city, and that's PCAV. We have strong new leadership. We have a lot more active membership. It's a growing membership, reaching out into all segments of the community. And the one thing that we consistently have said that's really starting to take root this year is that when it comes to this much violence and these types of activities, we really need the community's engagement. And that's PCAV. That's not the Peoria Police Department. That's not the elected officials. That's the community that cares. They want to have a safe community, and PCAV is where that starts.
Well, Councilman Riggenbach, you were just at a vigil for one of our most recent vigils for the most recent homicide victim. Do you feel like people are comfortable coming up to you? Is that community involvement really there?
I definitely feel that the folks in the East Bluff and in the neighborhoods that I represent, we're developing that kind of rapport. We have a residential officer living in the East Bluff, and Officer Hightower just has an outstanding reputation with the youth. He's really able to build relationships, whether it's playing a little basketball on the corner or walking down the street and talking with the kids. That's the kind of thing that we need to see more of. And I would just echo the mayor's remarks on PCAV. It is such a powerful tool. And I think we saw with the murder there on Friday that there was a lot of input from the community immediately that helped the police make that arrest so quickly.
Two arrests very quickly.
Right.
Exactly.
Let's go to Denise Mornay. As the first elected city official to the city council, first African-American woman elected, you've been there since 2013. Is the violence we're seeing now really any different from your perspective, or does this happen every summer?
Well, I think there are ebbs and flows. But what I have seen make a difference are people like Carl Holloway and his program that he's doing with young boys, mentoring young boys at very early ages, and Terry Burnside, what he's doing with bringing a lot of these young men into the work world and helping them to understand that there is a different way. Because although PCAF does wonderful work, it is the younger people, like the Carls and the Terrys, who are going to reach those who are in their age group, because those guys have been there. You know, they've gotten in trouble, they've turned their lives around, and they are now representations of what can happen. And so I like to try to support more of what they're doing and a lot more of their efforts. And you talked about on the East Bluff, you've got Jesse McGowan, who's got tons of proactive ideas about what can be done. Because I am sick to death of talking. We talk, we have these things on TV, and I'm gonna have to tell you that TV, and I'm gonna have to point the fingers to you guys, oftentimes glorify what's bleeding that leads. And there's a lot of wonderful things happening in the First District, on the South Side, in the East Bluff, that never gets covered. And so the community has this false perception that, oh my gosh, you don't want to go down there, when that is only maybe 1% of the population. And so we can have you guys help us to show the wonderful things that are happening in our communities. Maybe some of these folks who are causing a lot of the disturbances will also see that and believe that and want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Denise.
Appreciate that.
Captain Scally, you've been here before. You have done this. We talk a lot about what residents need from police. Is there anything specific that officers need from the residents to do something?
Basically, it's information. Councilman Riggenbach referred to it. The most recent homicide that occurred on Fry Street. We received a lot of information very quickly. Within 1 hour, we had 2 people in custody for that homicide. I do think we have a little bit better communication with the community than we have in the past. We've had 11 homicides this year. 9 of those homicides have ended with an arrest. So the one that stands out more than anything, and I think everybody realizes it, is the 4-year-old. But also Luis Salazar, who was only 18 years old, was shot in the Taft homes, and he lost his life. And we still haven't got that one solved either. And every one of those is something that touches us, and we want to get them solved for the family and have justice be done.
And the issue that hits so often is the ages of not just the suspects, but the victims, too. Definitely tears at your heartstrings. We appreciate all our panelists here. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you for the comments. We're going to talk to you and the other panelists when we come back. Again, you're watching a special edition of 25 News entitled Peace in Peoria.
Up next, we tackle the issue of community involvement and ask who is responsible for the visions of our community. Also, what do our youth need from us to prevent them from a life of crime or violence? Stay with us. Welcome back to our special Peace in Peoria. Again, we are addressing the rise in violent crime in our area and focusing on the young people that are often at the center of it.
Take a look. According to the city's website, actual crime is down in Peoria 10% last year to now. And even over the past 5 years, crime has decreased by 6%. However, it's the ages of the accused offenders that is dropping significantly. And that has caught the attention of many of our panelists, and that is where we want to start this next round of discussions.
We have a 14-year-old who is charged with first-degree murder. So first, how do we get here? Anyone can tackle that.
We don't know. That's the problem. We don't know how we got here. And at this point, it's how do we get us away from here, you know?
Talk about reaction when you first heard about this murder just 1 week ago. It was on a Wednesday. 16-year-old, Zarias Fair, is killed. The alleged triggerman, 14 years old. The alleged accomplice, 18. All these kids too young to even buy anything at a liquor store. What are your thoughts about just the ages involved in that case alone?
For me, it's shocking. The ages are getting younger and younger, and then when you look at, you know, what is the crime over, it's ridiculous what the crimes are over. I mean, steal some gym shoes or get $4 or $5. This is time and age that we're living in. I mean, homicide is like an epidemic. It's like a mental health issue that really should be dealt with the community health. It's passed on. There's so many of our children that we're seeing who manifest as behavior issues, but really are suffering from undiagnosed post-traumatic stress. And so every time we see a homicide, every time someone witnesses a homicide, there's going to be a result of post-traumatic stress, which is just going to stimulate similar behaviors that's puzzling to those outside of that behavior.
Good point.
Go ahead.
I think when I first heard about it, my first thought was, okay, we are not doing enough fast enough. So I think even though we do have some things in place that are happening in the city, it's not enough and it's not fast enough. And it's almost like too little too late. And I think we have to have more of a sense of urgency in addressing these issues. Because we know that poverty and violent crime go hand in hand. So if we are not aggressively trying to figure out how we're going to eliminate poverty in our city, we're going to keep seeing these types of situations.
Thank you, Shama. Gloria, you've been a community activist for years, and you are often on the front lines with the families. What are they saying they need?
You know, the families are really struggling. There's so much that they do need. They don't even know where to start. That's why we want to come in. That's why we're trying to help, because it is so much going on right now in the community. You know, families are struggling, families are suffering, you know, both economically as well as trying to provide for their families. So, you know, they are really in turmoil themselves to try to figure out what to do. You know, they need counseling, the family need counseling, the family needs services. So, you know, there's a lot that needs to be done, and the family is just, they're at ends to where do they turn next. So, you know, and as community service, we have to make sure that we help provide that to them.
Bernice Gordon-Young, you're with It Takes a Village. Tell us about the self-esteem factor for some of these young people. Do they feel as if they have enough going for themselves that they don't need to turn to violence, or is it more an issue of they don't have a job perhaps, or they don't have something going for themselves and they want to take it from someone else? What are you hearing?
I think at the core of it, it is about self-worth and about instilling that in our children, but we can't do that if we don't have it ourselves. And so one of the things that we try to do is create that sense of community, of village, coming back and going back to that place of looking out for each other. When we look at the economic status of so many families are struggling, working 2 and 3 jobs, they don't often have the time to invest in their children. That's what we try to do, fill that gap, whether it is food or toiletries or school supplies. We try to fill that gap in some way, whether it is a mentoring program. So there's services here in place. We just need more hands on deck.
And you heard what Stephanie was talking about. The cost of some of the camps can be $200, $300, $500. What are you hearing about keeping kids active in the summer and the difficulty they face staying active?
Different programs. Last Friday, PCAV partnered with Proctor Center to do a movie night at our Sovereign's Grace Church, you know. And it was just basically bringing the kids out. You know, everything was free, popcorn. And, you know, and that's what we have to do. We have to provide free activity for these children to give them something to do. Children want to be structured. Children want to have activities. Children want to be involved. So as a community, we have to make sure that we provide that services for them.
Good answer.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Gloria.
So we'll be talking a little bit more about those kids and their family, but we do want to remind you, for those watching this special live on our Facebook, we are encouraging you to pass along any questions you have for our panelists in the comment section. Again, we'll be asking their questions later on in our program and our question and answer panel.
Up next, a topic that is not easy to talk about, but a key part to solving the issue, peace in Peoria and the family structure, is next when we come back on the special edition of 25 News. Welcome back to our special report of 25 News, Peace in Peoria. We continue to search for answers to the recurring problem that we are seeing, and that is reducing the violence.
Now, I've had the opportunity to talk to many of our panelists behind the scenes as a reporter, and the consensus seems to be that the solutions are actually under our nose. Now, Stephanie shared earlier that numbers from the city's website show shots fired over the past few years versus the number of actual homicides. But just take a look at this. Juvenile crimes like aggravated assault and battery for this year show a 14% increase in February, up 63, and then March, 214% increase. So my question for some of you is, why do our kids even have the time to commit crimes? Where are they getting them, and how are they even getting guns?
We had a discussion today. I partnered with Manuel, and we have a summer youth leadership school today, and we talked about guns. We talked about violence today. The impression is that if you don't have a gun, then you don't have any power, and you're vulnerable. Guns are very easy to get a hold of. Guns is part of the culture. But the other thing that we challenge our young folks doing the leadership thing is protect your heart. Listen to the music that they're being exposed to. Look at the games. Ask the children, what games are you looking at? Violence. What are you looking on television? Looking at television. Violence. So they're being socially programmed to commit violence, but it's at an unconscious level.
Let's ask Alyssa Bledsoe, a recent graduate of Manual High School. What were you hearing about getting access to weapons? How difficult is it in Peoria, from what you've heard?
It's not difficult at all. Like, they're everywhere. It's just the simple fact that they're so easy to get to, and that, like, it's like a thing. It's like a trend, kind of. Like, if you don't have a gun, like he said, like with guns, they feel like they have power. And without it, they feel like they're vulnerable. And that's the thing.
Let's talk about the violent increase we talked about in the statistics with youth on youth. Is it your perspective that this is gang violence or not? Yes, sir, Mara.
My perspective is, and we're going to have a forum upon this, is that at the point where, particularly with this last murder, that African-American males are consciously and unconsciously participating in black genocide. And so this behavior is an unconscious response. However, it is a form of genocide, and it's all across the country. So I don't think that when individuals are participating in this, that they don't have the consciousness that we're wiping each other out in a genocide.
Martin Johnson, what are you hearing about that subject?
I would also say with that of the taking of the young lives by other young men is that when you don't value your own life, it's easy to take another's life. And with that, when we look at some of the issues that we've spoken about with the the unique family dynamics of sometimes the male figure that's missing in the home to be able to sort of kind of set the structure. The family is the institution or the background of society. Whenever that's fractured, you get the chaos that we're now getting. So others will pursue in trying to figure out life, survival of the fittest.
Besides guns, what's a positive source of self-esteem that you're seeing now? What are folks saying helps them feel more empowered or feel more in control besides weapons?
I think there's a need for more opportunities for our youth to get involved in. I think we have several programs, some mentoring programs where we're engaging the young men and having some positive interactions is making a difference, making them feel good about themselves, believing in themselves, that there are things that they can accomplish. I think we need more opportunities to engage our youth. And another thing, I think there's the responsibility. You talk about guns. We should have more responsibility. If I'm a gun owner, I should have more responsibility of taking care and locking that gun up at all times. We have so many guns that are being stolen out of unlocked vehicles that end up on the street. So we have a lot more responsibility to help curtail some of the problems that we're having in the community.
When it comes to responsibility, a lot of people say, it falls on the family, or it falls on the community, it falls on the school. So as a member of PCAB, do you think we have enough resources for the parents to guide those kids in the right direction?
I think the families need more engagement as well. PCAB, one thing we're doing, we're starting to canvass communities and doing healthy community health walks, so we can engage families more to find out what do they need from us, what do they need from our community, so we can start providing more services and assistance as needed. A lot of times we don't ask that question. What can we do for you? We tell them what you might need, but what can we bring and help you survive within our community?
Another thing everybody needs this time of year is a job or some money to go and do some things in the summertime. What's the most common summer job you're hearing that folks do have, young people have now, currently in the city? Martin?
Well, I would say with some of the youth that are within our ministry, most of them are in the fast food.
Okay, fast food.
Business.
Akbar?
Basically the same, fast food. If any, back in the day we had a great investment in summer youth programs. We don't have that anymore. That's an issue.
Is that enough, of course, is the question, right?
And are those wages even livable? Because that is a lot of the times the reason why people turn to crime. All right, well, thank you again to all of our panelists.
Up next, a call to action. We'll discuss how these problems we've identified can be fixed.
We'll take a look at that on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Live from the WEEK studio, a discussion about the recent violent activity in Peoria. Your hosts tonight, Tyler Lopez and Lauren Melendez. Peace in Peoria.
And we want to welcome everyone back to the second half hour of our special report here on 25 News entitled Peace in Peoria.
For those of you just joining us, we are addressing the recent violence activity in the Peoria metro area and the astounding young ages of those people involved. And we are also talking about possible solutions. So here's a look at who you'll be hearing from tonight. We have Peoria Mayor Jim Ardis, Peoria Police Sergeant Sherelle Stinson, who leads their Crime Stoppers Division, community activist Terry Burnside, Gloria Clark, also a community activist, Pastor Martin Johnson of New Beginnings Ministries, 1st District Councilwoman Denise Moore, and Agbara Bryson of the New Millennium Institute.
Also tonight, we have this group, folks. On our panel, Peoria Police Captain Mike Scally is here. Bernice Gordon-Young, founder of It Takes a Village. Bobby Ford, you just heard from him, from Peoria Community Against Violence, or PCAV. Chris Duncan, chairman of PCAV, is here. Alyssa Bledsoe, a recent graduate of Manual High School, along with Shama St. Louis from the Black Justice Project. And rounding it all out, 3rd District Councilman from Peoria, Tim Riggenbach.
So more from those panelists in just a moment as we talk about police and community relations. But first, earlier in this hour, we laid out some of those problems according to statistics, but also from experiences from our residents.
Now we're focused on finding possible solutions. Stephanie Rodriguez takes a look at that angle.
We want it now! Stop the violence! That death of that 4-year-old child took a toll on this city. And I hear a lot of people talk about what they want to do, how they want to do it, but I don't see nothing. Here's my thing. If you're going to talk a good talk, I want to also see you walk that walk.
By March of 2019, the city of Peoria saw a 172% increase in murders since 2014. This leaves many, like Edna Adams, asking what can be done. Many residents worry about see something, say something, causing unintended consequences. Some feel the disconnect between authorities and residents that plays into this can be bridged.
Peoria Police Department should walk the beat to form a relationship with the neighborhood. When something happened, you want the community to help you. They're not going to help you because you're not forming a relationship with them.
Others say it can only work if Peoria does its part too.
If you want to make a positive impact, reach out to the Peoria Police Department. See what type of ways that you can get involved to better your community, because police can't solve everything. They really can't. We don't want a police officer at every corner because we don't want to treat this place like it's a refugee camp or something along those lines.
Organizations like the Neighborhood House, the Wraparound Center, and the Dream Center Peoria are just some of the various resources available to help those in need. Yet violence is still a choice many here are making. Local mentor Carl Holloway is taking a first step and asking others to join him.
The community can't move far if the leaders aren't in front, setting the way and setting the pace. So that's a very important thing. All the leaders or so-called leaders or mentors need to come together as one and move forward. The agenda should be competing against poverty, not competing against each other.
A lot of parents need to focus and really speak to their children. Sit down with your kids and find out what's really going on with them.
When you talk about crime and when you talk about family members being on drugs or family members being arrested or being detained by police and things of this nature, you know, these are things that can trigger like pretty much similar reactions to like post-traumatic stress, you know. So we have our young people that are experiencing levels of PTSD at a very early age.
Of course, not everyone has a person they can open up to, but they could.
They want to see the cool uncle. They want to hang out with the cool aunt, the big brother, the big sister. So I really challenge people who don't normally feel they need to be involved to get involved, because you might be able to impact a kid that I can't, and vice versa.
Those who have been down paths that have left them forever changed say getting involved to save others is key.
I've also been an absent father myself, and I've watched a single mom raise children on her own, and I've been incarcerated. So with all those factors into my past, it has instilled in me some ways to help people with their future, and that's why I give back.
All right. It's not something that you can just pray away necessarily. It's not something that you can just throw money at necessarily. It's going to take the whole package, and at the root of that, I believe, is us investing the time into our communities and making sure that our kids are able to visibly see the example that we want them to be.
All right, again, thank you, Stephanie Rodriguez. We're getting right into our panel.
I want to get to that now. And talking about a call to action,
right.
I'm curious to see what you think, Mr. Duncan, about the resident officer program. That's something new that has been tried for several years. It's expanding. In fact, on the run on Saturday at the Steamboat Classic, there's another home. It's about to become a resident officer home. Do you think you're getting the results from this program?
I think that's probably one of the more excellent programs that the city of Peoria has. There's several of the officers that I've met in the residence officers program, and they're doing an extremely good job in their area. Now, unfortunately, their area is a lot smaller than what the area of the city is. So probably within 2 to 3 blocks around their area, most of the people know them, most of the young people know them, most of the older people know them, and most of them believe that they can trust them to help them whatever situation that comes out. So I think that's an excellent program that they have. I know one officer in particular, Officer Hodges. He's extremely outgoing and moving out into all of the neighborhoods.
Sergeant Stinson, what are you seeing with this program? What have you noticed within the department, and also the officers when they give you feedback?
You know, it's a great program. It's been a great thing for the city. I know people didn't know what to expect when the officers first were going to move into the neighborhood. How would it be? Some of the officers didn't know what to expect. But it's been a real positive thing for everyone all around. They have someone they can talk to. The officers work closely with the city council members, and the city council members work closely with the officers, which gives the community another voice and a little link to be able to help go to those officers, say, I saw something around the corner. You don't have to really wait for a long response or anything. That officer's always working. They'll go out, investigate, or hop on the radio and start getting stuff done.
But when you're knocking on doors with Crime Stoppers and you're canvassing, you're an African-American police officer, are people, do they gravitate toward you? Do they speak to you? Do you sense that there's something they're not saying? Because, again, we know our chief believes that in the most recent murder, people know something. Or, excuse me, Jeremiah Ward, people know stuff and they're not coming forward. So do they go, man, I'm not talking to you? Or do they open up?
It's interesting. I'm born and raised here in Peoria. I have a lot of interest in this city. I know a lot of the people. We'll go back to the Alexis Scott case where she's missing. I actually grew up in that house on Richmond. So some of these cases literally take me back through my own childhood. I tell people I don't look like what I came from. So I can relate to going to, I called myself a District 150 All-Star. I went to Glen Oak White Middle School, Laux. You know, we always moved. We were on Section 8 at times. And so I saw violence. I literally, on Garfield Street, saw a gentleman named Samuel Powell get shot with a shotgun in the middle of the street. And so a lot of times people will look at me as a uniform or a badge, but then I'll try to give them a piece of my history, and then they understand that I understand them. So that opens up a lot more.
For our council people, you helped shape the resident officer program. What do you foresee as the next step that can make a difference?
Well, we've talked a lot about the resident officer program, but what also helps are programs like GLOW that's in Manual High School. Dawn Jeffries is doing a wonderful job with some young women out of Manual High School. You have Sherry Gordon that is teaching young girls how to have etiquette and go to pageants. These are young girls you won't see at Status Fighting. We also have, we talked about Carl Holloway and his Male Mentor Mondays. We talked about the 100 Black Men of Central Illinois. They are every Wednesday at Carver Center providing mentorship to boys, and all of these things are free. You have the Tri-County Urban League. They have IT training for young boys and young girls for free. There's a lot of things that are happening. The city is providing funding through grants for employment training. We have a commission, the Advisory Commission on Human Resources, that every year they ask people, please submit an opportunity to receive a grant for employment training. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have to keep talking about the wraparound center at Treewind School. Because when you're talking about these young kids that are out here causing the disturbances, there are a lot of issues with the family. It's not just a young kid, but the family can take advantage of the wraparound center. Mom or dad who's there, there are issues that they're dealing with more than just one child, with unemployment, with lack of transportation, with funding for things that the kids need. So I'm really trying to get folks to utilize that wraparound center because that's what's going to help in our communities.
So when it comes to the wraparound center and all those resources, it's clear there is really no shortage in Peoria. We have great programs for underserved communities, families, schools. Councilman Riggenbach, are we making sure that the people who really need them have access to them? Are we putting those posters up in corner stores where these families frequent to buy their groceries? Are we putting them at the bus stops? You know, not all of them have access to transportation. Do they have access to these resources?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face as a city at so many levels. How do we effectively communicate with our citizens in the 21st century? Social media is a blessing and a curse at so many levels. We don't even want to get into that right now. But I think that face-to-face interaction of our resident officers, it just speaks to the souls of those kids. And I would be remiss if I didn't and just remind us of some of the things that are working. The Y has Eastbound Rebound at the community center every Saturday morning for kids from ages 8 to 12 or something, 14. And it's amazing how many kids show up for that. The East Bluff Neighborhood Housing Service has a program called Lawn and Order, and they actually employ kids to go mow the grass. They have contracts with not just the neighbors, but with institutions as well. Those are things that are working and that are getting the kids motivated and showing them the productive, what that hard work does. Clearly, we need to do more. We need to find the most effective way to communicate, but let's not forget all the people that are out there right now making an impact on many, many lives.
And it does take a village, as we've heard, right?
It does take a village.
Parents are working so hard. It's not all the parents' fault. They've got so much on their plate, but we need to continue to help them. And one of the biggest ways I think we can help is to put a call out to all of the churches. You have tons of people there on Sundays and on Wednesdays and on Saturdays, and a lot of these churches have folks in there all the time to make sure that these free programs you're telling your congregation that these things are out there because that's where we can make a difference. Years ago, my parents used to say the church was an integral part of the civil rights movement. And I contend the church is going to be an integral part in us bringing a cease to the violence that's out there today.
And let's not forget how many different things are happening. Just the folks on this panel represent so many organizations and so many programs. Wouldn't it be great if we could catalog that in some format that the folks, when the kid says, I'm bored, I have nothing to do, we would be able to have that resource
There's no
for
such
them.
thing as boredom, number one.
Yeah. So getting the message out, I think, is
well, it would appear one possible avenue would be the website, certainly.
Right, exactly. And like, well, social media, because that's where they're gathering. So, of course, again, thank you so much. We want to, appreciate our panelists, and we also want to highlight again that we are doing this live on Facebook. So we encourage you to put your questions in our comment section so we can ask them at the very end.
We'll be doing that in just a few minutes. We want to make sure we have all the topics covered tonight. In our next segment, we will address police and community relations.
Welcome back to a special edition of 25 News. This is Peace in Peoria, and we are now turning our attention to what may be the most difficult topic of the evening, and that is police-community relations.
Yeah, we've certainly seen the chief, Lauren Marion, visibly frustrated several times on camera this year over unsolved crimes. So one of the questions I want to ask is for Sergeant Sherelle Stinson. What's your viewpoint? Are you still finding too many eyewitnesses who are reluctant to step forward? Those who see something still do not say something?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that will not say anything. They're afraid of any type of retaliation or anything else that happens. To that, I say, I'd rather have those people locked up in jail. If you're that afraid that they can do something to you, then they probably eventually will do something to you. So to get them off the street is the better answer. And you can always be anonymous through Crime Stoppers. Crime Stopper has been around for a long time. We're global, actually. Crime Stopper has done over almost 500 million crimes solved across the country, and you don't hear about, people being retaliated against or anything like that.
Mayor Artis, I'd like to pose this next question to you. Is this a black problem in Peoria? No matter how you slice it, when you look at the statistics, the people who are affected disproportionately by the violence, the victims are African American, and then a lot of times the people behind the trigger who are pulling it are also African American. Is it a law enforcement problem? Is it a black problem? Whose issue?
No, this isn't a blame problem as far as I'm concerned, because while we're seeing a majority of these homicides and these violent actions, a lot of them are black on black. But we're not here tonight because it's an isolated black on black problem. It's a community problem, and it's like this everywhere in the country. So, it's up to us as leaders and people in the community who are interested in coming to some type of solutions to these to work together, to sit there and say that this is a black problem or a brown problem or a white problem. We're not in a blame game right now. We're in a game right now that it's very important, and the community needs to get involved to solve it.
When you look at what's next, what can the city do, if anything, to try and reduce the number of reluctant eyewitnesses? Is there a step that hasn't been taken you think could make a difference there?
We're obviously open to those types of suggestions. We've tried a whole lot of things over a number of years, and as a lot of these instances have gotten more focus, I think, as some of the previous folks said, social media plays such a big part in this. We do a lot to try to have an impact on social media, try to negate some of that. But I think that the solution really is going to be more and more involvement by the community, more of the community taking ownership of their community and saying, well, we just can't rely on the police department to do all these things anymore. It's just the issues are too big. And so no matter what it is, if you can mentor, if you can spend time going to schools and reading with some of these kids, if you can just provide that guidance that a lot of these kids don't get, especially the young kids. I don't want to throw in the key on anybody, but a lot of these kids, when they get to be mid and upper teens, they've really started down a bad road. So we need to help them, and we really do need to help them. But we so much need to focus on these younger kids that don't need and shouldn't have to go down the road that so many of their relatives and friends that have gone down. Really put that focus on these kids. We can save these young kids, and we can change their lives.
I appreciate that. Captain Scally, the mayor mentioned that police cannot do it all, and of course that is true. And we've also seen that the chief, Lauren Marion, was visibly upset, almost couldn't get through a press conference when we talked about a 4-year-old boy being gunned down. Is there a reason the chief isn't here tonight? And because you work so closely with him, what are the things that he is proposing in terms of solutions?
The chief is on vacation tonight. He is out of state. That's the reason he's not here, and he was touched by it. Anybody in this room that wasn't touched by it, then those people have a problem because it affects all of us when a 4-year-old child is the victim of gunfire not intended for him. And as far as plans go, I mean, we watch the shot spotter. We've got technology today that shows us where these things are happening at, where shots are being fired. We direct resources to those areas. And like Councilman Rigobach stated earlier, was about social media. Blessing and a curse. We find information from social media. It also directs people where to go and where things are happening, and it brings people to that area. But by the same premise, like I said, is it also provides us with information of things that have been happening. The 4-year-old, and we keep going back to that because that's what brought all this to everybody's attention. Right. It's a shame it took a 4-year-old to be killed to bring this to everybody's attention, because this didn't just start. Oh. You know, we've had a whole lot of people killed. We've had 11 homicides this year. Last year's homicides, you look at it. But it takes a 4-year-old to bring it to everybody's attention, and it shouldn't take that because, like the mayor said, it's a community issue. Everybody cares about this, and everybody needs to go out and do something. It makes it a little bit difficult for the police. We need to form these relationships with these kids when they're 5, 6 years old, because by the time they're 14 to 16, they have become who they're going to be. And for us to go in and try and change that is very difficult to do, especially when a police officer goes. We try to make these relationships. But by the same premise, they see the police officer that may come and at the same time arrest a family member, arrest somebody that they know, and take them away and realize that, you know, we're just doing our job.
Let's talk about a recent success. Just last week we had Zariah Fair killed, but in just a matter of hours, you did get some help from the community. Can you explain what helped or what changed in that case to get to a resolution so quickly?
Basically, it was people who were at the scene, provided information that directed us to the people, and actually we found out where they were at by having information from the community and the officers who were in the area who knew who may be involved and where they may be headed to. And it was just an excellent job by the officers as well as the community.
Gloria, the mayor mentioned something that I really liked in terms of reading to kids, hanging out with them. It's not necessarily always just programs, but just, you know, human interaction. As someone who is working with families every day in the community, talking to them, is that something that the families are echoing, that we just need some help? Hey, I've got to go to work and work a double shift. Can someone not just put an iPad in front of my kid? Could they read to them? Do you see that that's something that could stand to be a
yes, that happens all the time. You know, even in my work field, you know, we find that happens all the time. We have a children program there, and a lot of my coworkers will go over and take a book. I saw a book on one of my the lady that I work with, and she was like, she was going over to the children's room that afternoon to read with the children, just to hang out. She doesn't have to do that in her spare time, but we need to see more of that. You know, I know people that goes down to the Dream Center, you know, and talk to those children in their programs and hang out with those kids on the street corner. You know, we have Terry Burnside here tonight. You know, he's always out there with the children, hanging out with them. Peoria Community Against Violence. We're starting a walk, just walking through the neighborhoods, talking to the children, you know, on a weekly basis, trying to just get to know the children in the community, talk to them and let them know, you know, what's going on in the world, find out what their issues are, what they want to see happen, you know, and just spending time with that child to build a relationship. And I think the more we see that, the more we start doing that, and instead of just allowing children just to go out on their own, adults, let's get with those children. Let's hang out with them. Let's play ball with them. You know, doing things with children is very important. You know, getting them engaged and keeping them engaged, you know.
I think in any relationship, it takes two.
It does.
So the police, I'm very proud of how much we try to get into the community, all the different events we have. But by all means, if people want to do a ride-along, if people want to do a Citizen Police Academy, even in our interview board, that's one of the most important questions we ask people that want to be a Peoria police officer. What do you do with your community?
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to come right back because we do have a final panel. Our Q&A portion is next. welcome back to a special edition of 25 News. This is Peace in Peoria.
We've heard a lot of discussion tonight about communication being key, reaching people at a younger age, also cooperation with police. We also talked about responsibility tonight. We want to talk with our final panel tonight about what you see as the key going forward to changing the violence that we've been seeing so far this summer. Let's start with Terry Burnside.
I think some of the, one of the most important areas is actively engaging with some of the known people as far as perpetrators, some of the individuals. I hear a lot of people talk about community engagement, which is great, about building relationships, but we still need to kind of tap into some of the individuals who are driving some of the violence.
And what is it you want to try to talk to those folks? You're hoping to, sometimes these are people who have already chosen their path. What is it you're going to say to turn them around?
Just speaking from experience, sharing great ideas with them, showing them the flip side from an individual who has been there, who looks like them, who have some of the same shared experiences, and just talk from what I know.
Sergeant Stinson, as a police officer, do you think that young men or young women who are in violent crimes recognize that there is a future outside of that? We're talking about follow through, we talked a lot about opportunities, but do they believe that that really could come to fruition for them?
I believe they do. Some people absolutely do not, but somebody like myself, I take that very important to try to make sure if I say something, I do it. A lot of our police officers are the same way. We definitely try to follow through. As a supervisor, we try to make sure those officers do follow through. We want to let people know that they're not alone. There's a lot of rules, general orders, law that people don't understand why police officers have what actions they do or why police officers don't get in trouble for the same thing a citizen does. But that's another part of this education. But at the end of the day, we all put on this uniform because we want to give back to our communities.
Gloria Clark, tell us about the status of PCAV right now. What is the energy like? What is the viewpoint like with these recent homicides?
You know, I think our energy level is rising because we want to see a change in Peoria. We want to see the homicides decrease. We don't want to see it continue to grow. So, you know, we are trying to come up with ideas. We're asking the community to join with us on different ideas that we have come up with, like the walk I talk about. It's a health walk, and it's just basically healthy body, healthy minds, getting in the community, meeting your neighbors, and just being out there. You know, it's like if every community leader would come out and join with another community leader, you know, how long do they have to pull out a gun if we're all out there walking and hanging out and being active with these children and with these young adults, you know? So I would love to see that. I would love to see a huge collaboration on different things in the community.
We're going to move it. Thank you, Gloria. We're going to move into our Q&A portion. This will be for you, Bernice. Renee has asked, when will you meet with the youth to ask them what they are seeking? And when it comes to It Takes a Village, you often go to different venues. So is that something that's happening in the near future?
Well, actually, that's how It Takes a Village was birthed, through having a conversation. I'm a psychotherapist, and so I understand the underlying and the manifestations of some of the challenges. And it was children who told me what some of the needs are. Often, you know, kids are told what goes on in the house stays in the house. Right. And I was just honored to have them be able to share some of the challenges that they have. We can't have this type of conversation, though, without talking about the school-to-prison pipeline and cultural competence and how that really needs to be in place from the beginning. And you have people invested in your life who get you. They understand your culture. And then even demographically here in Peoria, the line between War Memorial, North and South, makes a huge difference in how people are treated and what investments we really make in the city. So if we're going to have a real conversation, I think we've got to look at that piece as well.
We're talking about physical structure of the city and who is placed where and what access to opportunities they have.
We have another question. This is from Renee. Terry will bring this to you. The question is about the structure of school being out. How do you replace that structure in order to reduce the violence?
There's things in the place as far as from programming, but I think a lot of that stuff should have been taking place long before school was out. We talk about job opportunities. Some people go to summer school, but things should have been put into place long before school was out to help them to get channeled and focused in the right direction, a positive direction, to prevent negative behaviors, negative attitudes, and just getting into trouble.
Before we get to summer.
Yes.
We want to thank all of our panelists so much for being here tonight. So many interesting topics discussed, so many good programs revealed yet again, and a lot of action being taken to try to get folks together and reduce the violence.
We want to thank you, our viewers, as well, for giving us your questions. Of course, if there are things that you did not see or hear tonight, we will, of course, take the effort and time to go back into our newsroom and really follow up on those as well. So again, you've been watching a special edition of 25 News. This is Peace in Peoria. Thank you again for joining us.
See you right here on 25 News at 10.